Essence, rhetoric, and situations. The essential question to be addressed is what is the relationship between rhetoric and situations? It will not be surprising that I take the converse position of each of Bitzer's major statements regarding this relationship. For example, I would not say rhetoric is situational, but situations are rhetorical. Not exigence strongly invites utterance, but utterance strongly invites exigence. Not the situation controls the rhetorical response, but the rhetoric controls the situational response. Not rhetorical discourse does obtain its character as rhetorical from the situation which generates it, but situations obtain their character from the rhetoric which surrounds them or creates them. When George Aiken suggested several years ago that the United States should declare that she had won the war in Vietnam and get out, it was a declaration of rhetorical determination of meaning. No one understands or understood the situation in Vietnam because there never was a discrete situation. The meaning of the war, civil war, came from the rhetoric surrounding it. To give salience to a situation in an area roughly the size of one of our middle sized states and to translate its exigencies into patriotism provoking language and symbolism was a rhetorical choice. There was no reality of the situations being in or not being in our national interest. At least George Aiken saw that the situation was primarily rhetorical, not military or political. And since it was produced rhetorically, it could be exterminated rhetorically. As Edelman states, political beliefs, perceptions, and expectations are overwhelmingly not based upon observation or empirical evidence available to participants, but rather upon cueings among groups of people who jointly create the meanings they will read into current and anticipated events. The particular meanings that are consensually accepted need not therefore be cued by the objective situation. They are rather established by a process of mutual agreement upon significant symbols. Political crises, contrary to Bitzer's analysis of Churchill, are rarely found. They are usually created. There was a Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, not because of an event or group of events, but mainly because acts of rhetorical creation took place, which created a political crisis as well. A president dramatically announced on nationwide television and radio that there was a grave crisis threatening the country. This was accompanied by symbolic crisis activity, including troop and missile deployment, executive formation of ad hoc crisis committees, unavailability of high government officials, summoning of congressional leaders, etc. Once the situation was made salient and depicted as a crisis, the situation took new form. In 1970, however, in a similar situation, the prospects of a Russian nuclear submarine base off Cienfuegos was not a crisis because President Nixon chose not to employ rhetoric to create one. Bitzer refers to the controlling situation of President Kennedy's assassination. The creation of salience for certain types of events, such as presidential assassinations, may be so ritualized that it is uninteresting to analyze it rhetorically. This does not mean, however, that the situation controlled the response. It means that the communication of the event was of such consensual symbolism that expectations were easily predictable and stable. Even Bitzer describes the reaction to the assassination as resulting from reports of the assassination. Again, one cannot maintain that reports of anything are indistinguishable from the thing itself. Surely Bitzer cannot believe that there was an intrinsic urgency which compelled the rotunda speeches following the killing of President Kennedy. Note that the killing of important people is communicated with the evocative term assassination. In fact, the killing of a president of this country at this time is not a real threat to the people in any measurable way. How smooth, in fact, is the transference of power? How similar the country is before and after the event? How similar are the president and vice president? But since rhetoric created fears and threat perception, the rotunda speeches were needed to communicate reassurances. Conclusion. As Edelman states, language does not mirror an objective reality, but rather creates it by organizing meaningful perceptions abstracted from a complex, bewildering world. Thus, rhetoric is a cause, not an effect of meaning. It is antecedent, not subsequent to a situation's impact. Rhetors choose or do not choose to make salient situations, facts, events, etc. This may be the sine qua non of rhetoric, the art of linguistically or symbolically creating salience. After salience is created, the situation must be translated into meaning. When political commentators talk about issues, they are talking about situations made salient, not something that became important because of its intrinsic predominance. Thus, in 1960, Kennedy and Nixon discussed Kamoi and Matsu. A prominent or high ethos rhetor may create his own salient situations by virtue of speaking out on them. To say the president is speaking out on a pressing issue is redundant. It is only when the meaning is seen as the result of a creative act and not a discovery that rhetoric will be perceived as the supreme discipline it deserves to be.